As a first-time tech entrepreneur, building a product can be so frustrating. When do you launch the product? How do you find the team to help build this thing? It is all sorts of frustration. I had a great conversation with a lady today, and I want to tell you more about her story and a couple really interesting things that you can learn from it. To survive and thrive, you must adopt a product-driven mindset. So the lady I talked to is an expert in her industry. She literally goes around to speak at events every single month to the largest clients in her industry. If she can build this product, it can support her sort of coaching and industry, advisory business that she does. And I think she would be wildly successful. Her challenge is she's never built a technology product before. So like a lot of people, that's super frustrating, and it takes months and years to learn like how to build software, right? And her challenge is she doesn't have a technical co-founder. So there's a couple really interesting things from her discussion that I want to tell you about that I think are valuable lessons. So the first one is, when do you launch the product? So she's been building this thing for almost a couple years, and I liken her to the owner of a restaurant who keeps polishing the floor. Like, they're excited for opening day, but they're terrified about opening day, right? They don't want to make a bad first impression. So they just keep polishing the floor, polishing the floor. They're scared to death to open, right? Like, she's in that mode now after this year or two building up to this anticipation. And my advice to her was, you've got to find beta customers. Yeah, you don't want to do this big splash to the industry and then look terrible, right? Like, she wants to hold up to her reputation. Like, she's well known in the industry. The last thing she wants is to launch a crappy product. Like, I get it. But that's why we do beta testing. That's why we find friendlies. We find 5 people that are willing to work with you to figure out how to improve the product and work through it. But there's a big problem with that I'll get to in a minute. But the other thing that she could do, of course, is make sure she limits the scope. Just like the restaurant owner could open and only sell chicken tenders, they don't have to sell like 30 things on the menu. Same thing with her software, right? Like, she can limit the number of features in the product way down to a smaller subset and launch that one product, or, less modules, less features that is still super high quality. But a lot of entrepreneurs, we don't want to do that, right? We want to build this perfect thing that solves all of the problems, and we want to solve it for everyone in the industry. Like, this is a struggle that we all have. So she has to grapple with that and learn to pull off the Band-Aid and let's go find the beta customers and move forward. But she's got one big challenge. The dev agency that she's working with, she doesn't really like, doesn't have a lot of trust in them, has not had a lot of good experiences with them. So now she's thinking, well, if I go do the beta testing and I get all this feedback from these people, I've got to be able to execute. I've got to be able to launch these changes they need, and I need to be able to move quickly. But I don't have a dev agency that I can move quickly with. And one of the big problems she has with this dev agency is supposedly they have 5 developers working on her project, and it's a company in Pakistan that somebody recommended to her, which is fine. There's smart people all over the world. But the challenge is she only talks to one of the developers, and that developer ends up being kind of the gatekeeper as the technical sort of project manager. And this highlights why offshore development fails a lot, because she can only talk to that person. And we know here at the Product Driven channel, product thinking and having developers with really strong communication skills is of utmost importance, right? This is the difference between success and failure. And she's kind of feeling the failure right now because of this. So she wants to meet with the whole dev team, explain to them like things about the industry, why the product should work this way, all this kind of stuff. And she literally can't. Like, this one developer that's the gatekeeper won't allow her to even do that. And I think there's a chance that in this case, it could be the other developers don't speak English. That could be part of the problem. I don't know for sure. But this sort of challenge happens a lot with Offshore, where you've got really don't have 5 people working on the project to begin with. Based on how much she's paying them, she's really paying them the equivalent of like maybe for 1 or 2 developers at most. But she they tell her she's getting 5, but she's getting, a little bit of time from 5 different people, which highlights another problem. If there's 5 people randomly working on the project and not anybody dedicated to the project, they aren't giving it their first priority. They're not building up that product knowledge. They're not showing ownership. They're not having the product thinking that we want, and they're just not dedicated to it. So again, if you're going to do offshore, you've got to make sure you're working directly with the team, and you want a dedicated team, and you should work with them like they're your employer. And so she's running into these sort of problems that are really common in offshore. So what does she need to do? She needs to find a new dev agency that can help her build this product so she can get to beta and she can move quickly. She can react quickly to the feedback from the beta and get this thing to market. It's time. After 18 months or whatever it is she's been doing this, it's time to get this thing to market. But ultimately, it takes a team. It's all about talent, and you've got to have a partner that you can trust to get the product to market, be that a dev agency, a technical co-founder, any kind of employee, whoever it is. You've got to have the right team so you can execute and move forward. So I hope you found this interesting today. I hear this kind of story a lot from other founders, struggles with like when to launch the product, how to do a beta, all this kind of stuff. They just don't know. Like, that is also new to them. And then they work with partners and they don't trust the partner. Makes it very difficult to move. These are some of the challenges that I help other entrepreneurs with. And at Full Scale, we're always trying to do things the right way. Like, we understand that this way doesn't work, and so we're always trying to instill these best practices with our clients. I hope you found her story interesting, and maybe you relate to some of her challenges. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Product Driven.